The Ball with the Beast podcast, presented by our good friends at White Insurance Services. He is Brent Hubbs, and down at the bottom is one Paul Fortenberry, who's coming to you live from a Spring Hill Suites after the big Liberty win over Western Kentucky. Jamie Chadwell said, Tyson Helton, no more.
Those Hilltoppers. Hey, I got my glasses on. I was trying to see if I could make sure no one was stealing signs for either side last night. Wanted a real, true, fair game, unlike some other prestigious, they would call themselves, university. So I was watching closely.
If this was NCIS or something like that, those things would have a camera in them.
Yeah, right here in the middle of it. Probably does.
They don't do that at Michigan, though. The SEC shorts thing where they like give them the old school like 1980s like television cameras.
It was a pretty good bit.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. Those guys are hilarious. I need to go make sure I watch that. Yeah, that's God. We talked off air about that one. That one, I can't wait to see what's going to happen. It's going to be hilarious. Sorry, Michigan.
So Tennessee comes up short last week, Paul. Your overall thoughts on the loss at Alabama?
Obviously a horrendous second half. No other way to talk about it. And I know, and fairly so, that the SEC officials, they didn't do you any favors, but frankly, neither did your team. You know, you didn't help yourself out on offense. You never really got control of the game in the second half, and defensively, you gave up too many big plays. Obviously, the big play coming right out of halftime was just killer. Alabama was able to get all the momentum back. So, you know, when you look at it like that, I really just, I try and look at the big picture more now than anything. And it was, it was a bad second half, one really terrible half of football, where at halftime you were sitting there thinking, this may be one of the more complete halves of football that Tennessee's played all year against a quality opponent. And so just a yin and yang game, total opposite halves. But, big picture, I don't think, God bless the GQ. I don't think it's panic time. It's not freak out time. I think they still have a lot left in front of them coming into the last month of the season. So obviously a disappointing second half, but again, you can't let that carry over to the game this weekend.
Over.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it, and I think Paul's right. Tennessee was complete in the first half, with the exception of the red zone. Yep. And they've got to fix red zone woes. They've got to fix short yardage woes, or make different decisions in short yardage situations. And you got to play 60 minutes. You don't go into this league and win a lot of games playing 45-minute games. You can't have a quarter off. You took a quarter off at Florida. You gave up 20 points in the second quarter. You no-showed to start the third quarter, and you gave up 17. And there's your football game. Tennessee's got to learn how to finish. They've got to learn how to play a full 60-minute football game, particularly on the road in this league, and that starts on Saturday. You play 45 minutes in Lexington, Kentucky, you're not going to like the result. You better line up and play because it's harder for this team, right? I mean, it's harder for them to score. So you've got to play the game differently. You got to manage the game differently, and you got to play for 60 minutes.
Speaking of this league, let's take a tour around it, and we'll start with.
Well, hey, AP, can I jump in real quick? I know we want to talk about it, but I thought this, and you guys, I thought this was the first game, and I'm not as close to the program, but it looked like there was just some questionable calls offensively. Did they miss Alex Golish? Did they miss, maybe he brought something different? And AP, I see you grinning over there, but I thought this was the first fairly game of the season where I thought, man, Heupel, he didn't have the mojo. Some of the fourth down calls just didn't feel it. Now, obviously, if he makes it, hey, he did great, and we're all saying what a genius he was. But this was the first game I thought fairly so deserved a little bit of criticism for some of those calls.
Yeah, I'm happy, Josh.
Yeah, let him know.
I think it's a situation where they're just not very good in short yardage, and what they're doing in short yardage doesn't work. So you got to make the adjustment there, or you just don't go for it, right? Like you punt the ball and you play field position. So do they miss Golish? Probably to some degree. I mean, listen, they were together for a while and had success. Now, Josh will tell you, and anybody who knows Josh around will tell you, he had success long before he got hooked up with Alex Golish, and I'm sure he'll have success once Alex Golish is gone. But when you got new people in new roles, it's different, and you've got to learn and adjust to it. And we'll see. I'll be curious to see how they manage the game this week. When they get a fourth down called near midfield, what's he going to do? Part of that is based on how they're playing against Kentucky, but I think you also have to look at the fact, AP, they just weren't real good about it.
All right, now that we've called, now that Paul's called for Joey Halsley and Josh Heupel's job.
Oh my gosh, not at all. No one should be that crazy.
Well,
Heupel's the guy. Give him the extension already.
They already gave him an extension, $9 million.
Worth it.
Exactly why which is why it's okay to criticize him a little bit for the decision to go for it on fourth down up 3.
Criticize me all you want if I'm making $9 million a year. I don't care.
Yeah, correct. So we travel down to College Station, South Carolina 2-5, trying to avoid going 2-6 after another loss last week, where Beamer kicked a field goal down 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter in Columbia, Missouri. Classic Beamer. Do we give South Carolina any shot on the road?
I'm not. I think we've all kind of figured out who South Carolina is this far into the season. Spencer Rattler is a good player, and he's going to make some plays, but their defense is not good, and offensively they're very one-dimensional. So now Texas A&M, they're not a great football team, but they're a much tougher football team than South Carolina. So yeah, I think A&M down there that's such a tough place to play. To ask South Carolina, who we've all been around the football teams. When you get this late in the season and you're not very good, it starts to snowball, and guys start playing for themselves. They don't play for the team. You get hurt. It's a lot easier to sit on the sidelines and to come back out. And I'm wondering if South Carolina is at that point in the season, if it's starting to fall apart a little bit.
And Hubbard, for that very reason, one would imagine if South Carolina can muster anything here and upset A&M, Jimbo ain't making it to Monday. If you lose to 2-5 South Carolina, I think that's exactly finally where everybody says enough. A&M's way, way more talented, and as good as A&M is at the line of scrimmage, this should be a day where Rattler is abused all day long.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where, South Carolina can't have any real confidence right now on either side of the ball. You wonder how they're handling things, kind of where their mental approach is, given that, your head coach broke his foot in frustration after a loss. He decided to open his press conference by scorching the school for not having an interview room. Like you just kind of wonder where they're at in terms of kind of headspace and sort of stay in the course and all those types of things. It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of that going on right now. So I think this is a really difficult matchup for South Carolina. It's a long trip to Columbia, Missouri, back to Columbia, South Carolina. Now you're going over to College Station. I don't think this sets up well for South Carolina at all.
No. Again, and Beamer is he's a struggle bus when it comes to pointing the finger in losses at. It doesn't matter whether it's the hot dog chain guys or the opposing media room, or there's always
his own team. Yeah. A couple of weeks he threw his own team just flat.
There's always something.
Yeah, you just got to read the room better, and again, sometimes the less you say, the better off things are. Sometimes, so.
It's fun to do that when you're winning. You can make funny jokes and do all that stuff when you're winning, but the flip side of that is nobody cares when you lose.
I will say this: hats off to the Missouri social media team, because the reproduction of the Full House deal, the Full House deal, making fun of South Carolina, who did the Full House thing, which they drew all the praise for, was a pretty good clap back after their win.
I saw that.
If you get into that world, if that's your thing, that one was pretty creative.
I thought making fun of them. I think they should have rolled a Step by Step or one of those others family 90s.
Another TGIF show, right?
Yeah, man, like that. Like I would have went with a different one.
Okay, fair.
And made fun of them that way. But either way, like it was still funny. Don't get me wrong. Like I found it very entertaining. I would have went with Who's the Boss and taken a full decade back before
old school right there.
Because I mean, hey, Drinkwitz is Beamer's boss. Florida, Georgia, we've got the outdoor party or whatever they're calling it these days because, we can't say cocktail. We can't have the beer barrel, But we can sell those cocktails and that beer in the stadiums. Florida, obviously, is not near a favorite to win this game. Georgia's a big favorite in this game. But occasionally in this matchup, a team that's the underdog can hang around and make it interesting. What will it take for Florida to be that team?
Man, I think, last I saw, and I don't know if it's still right, Georgia was a 14.5-point favorite. And I think that's a little too big.
An upset.
Well, I'm not saying the upset, but, Brock Bowers not supposed to play, right? Captain America, I think he should win the Heisman Trophy. We've already talked about that a few weeks ago. Now, I think this just feels like we don't know. This is weird. We're, today's 10:25. I don't think I know still who Georgia is. Like, yeah, they had the game where Carson Beck went off, and, man, he looked great. Their defense has been solid. But then on the flip side, Florida has a nice win, I think, over Tennessee and South Carolina, who's not great, but Mertz throws for, 400-something yards. He goes crazy. I just don't know that this is going to be one of those games where Georgia's just going to go in there and run away from it. Maybe they get the 14, 15-point win at adding a late score or something. But Austin, you kind of said it. These games are always tough. It's a weird game in rivalry games. Florida still has some talent. And I don't know. We all keep saying it. Maybe we're just wrong that Georgia's not as good or as talented as they've been the last 2 years. But hey, if you win, you win. So I do expect a closer game though on Saturday than the 14.5-point spread.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing for me about Georgia is because of the injury to Brock Bowers, do they kind of cut it loose in a different way? Were they a little bit too dependent on him at times? It was kind of Brock Bauer. Just like early on, they didn't turn Carson Beck loose till the second half against South Carolina, the second half against Auburn. Do they, with not having him there, do they do some things differently offensively? Maybe open it up a little bit more and not just be so dependent on him. I'd be curious to see kind of how aggressive Georgia is in this football game, particularly early offensively.
Back in 1997, Tennessee needed Georgia to beat Florida to get to Atlanta. This year, they need Florida to beat Georgia, and then they'll have to take care of business themselves to still potentially get to Atlanta. Does it feel like 97? That's the question.
I don't think so.
You know what? I'll be interested to see what happens when Georgia comes to Knoxville here in a couple weeks.
Tennessee's been really good at home. The last loss at home was to Georgia. That was a much different Georgia team and a much different Tennessee team.
Yep.
Not as good offensively, though, this year. So, if Bowers isn't back, does that kind of mitigate things? I'm with Hubbs, though. Like, now that he's not there, they're going to be forced to go to some different people. Does Ladd McConkey reemerge? What about those transfer receivers that have, had a few splash plays here and there? Again, Georgia's still uber talented. Heading into this game. And then we've got the battle for the beer barrel that we no longer battle for, but I'm going to still call it that. It's Tennessee and Kentucky, Paul, and, is your boy Devin O'Leary, the Irishman, ready?
He's probably as ready as he'll ever be, but I don't know if the officials will just call half the holding penalties that happen on Tennessee's defensive line or a quarter of them. I mean, that's going to set them back, 10 yards. Sorry, I had to get a jab. It's been really bad. And maybe it is every week against all the defensive lines, but I don't know what I'm missing against Tennessee's defensive line to miss that. But, I do think Tennessee's defensive line is the key here. Can they stop Ray Davis or slow him down? Mr. O'Leary, as maybe I like to call him. man, he's not the gamer that we thought he was coming over from NC State. So I think you can contain him. Tennessee's defensive back. You take that one half out from the Alabama game, and they're playing really solid football. So, I do think Tennessee defensively will have to step up. Offensively, golly, they've got to be consistent. I think that's the hardest thing with this team and Milton is overall the consistency. I mean, they're such a yo-yo team. It seems like offensively, 1 minute they're hot, and then the next minute they go 3 and out, 2 possessions in a row. And so if you can just be consistent against Kentucky, you're better than Kentucky. But if you have these periods where you go 2-3 drives in a row where you're 3-0, you're 3 and out punt, 3 and out punt, or a 4 or 5 and out punt, then you give Kentucky more opportunities, and Ray Davis may break a big one, right? So that's my thought on this game. Tennessee's a better team. But can they find some kind of consistency? And to me, that all starts with the ground game. Continue to lean on Jalen Wright. Continue to lean on Jabari Small and Dylan Sampson. That's that 3-headed monster. That you go as they go. So can you lean on them and get some first downs and get drives going? That's how I think about this game moving into it.
Yeah, I think you got to win first down. I mean, I think on both sides of the ball, you got to win first down. Put it in Leary's shoulder in third and longer situations. So Tennessee's ability to stop the run early downs, they did a really good job of that in the first half against Alabama, not nearly as well in the second half against Alabama. Tennessee first downs against Alabama in the first half, almost 8 yards of play. It was like 3.5, 4 yards of play in the second half. That changes what you call offensively on second and third down when you get off schedule. They don't have the ability to go with a big 60-yard play to kind of make up for a lost yard, to make up for second and 12. It doesn't feel like. They have big played Kentucky to death the last 2 years. Can they find big plays in this game? I don't know. Here's the other thing, Austin, too. I am going to be fascinated to see what the whistle looks like early in this game because the SEC is never going to acknowledge or admit anything. But is there a couple of early holding penalties called? You know what I mean? I don't think
I'm in agreement with you on that.
So it's not just me saying that watching the game. You guys are in agreement.
But is there going to be a pass? Is there going to be a pass interference penalty called? And listen, I'm not saying it's going to be the difference in the game, but I will be fascinated to see what the early whistle looks like in this game because the SEC is never going to acknowledge any mistake ever that was made previously. But sometimes, as we all know, there's some makeup things here and there along the way. I'd be curious to see what this whistle looks like.
I agree. I've said that early in the week that I thought that Tennessee would get the whistle in Lexington to make up for the lack of whistle in Tuscaloosa. And, it also goes back to kind of like when, Jordan would, not get a whistle, and Phil Jackson would go, it's ridiculous, and then he would lose his mind. And literally the next game, the guy blinks at him and they're blowing the whistle, against Jordan or, for Jordan against the other team. So, I mean,
I appreciated your question to Heupel about asking him about it. And, Heupel did the smart thing and didn't get fined. I think if I'm making $9 million a year, I let it loose. I take one for the team, write that check.
Yeah, I was not surprised Monday at the way he went about it, but in the moment after the game, that one was, and you can watch the video in AP. The restraint he showed was all the he had.
Well, the thing that is still just so maddening to me, is the whether it's the SEC or the NFL. And the NFL does a little bit better job on it, or maybe just Jim Irsay tells us that they admit they screwed up. But you've got to have some kind of accountability and transparent accountability. Hey, if so-and-so misses 7 calls, man, he's not doing a game in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however far out you have to schedule it out. Until you do that, until there's public accountability. And I know refereeing a hard gig. I get it. Nobody wants to do it, but you've got so much technology. You've got so much money that you should be reviewing things. And, I don't know what the balance is of, you can call a holding call on every play, right? You probably could. But at times where it changes a game, like it did, and I'm not trying to be a Tennessee apologist, but there were times where a penalty changed the momentum of a game. On crucial third downs, you thought you got to stop, and or it should have been an extra 10 yards and you redo third down. To have it to not have any solution and just let it go on year after year, I think it's just getting old, and people are getting so tired of it. And eventually it'll wound the game, I think. I don't know how or what it looks like, but somebody's got to step up and include more technology or figure a way to create some kind of accountability or transparency, because right now it just feels like, and deservedly so, rightfully so, it just feels like Alabama gets the benefit of the doubt. And while I don't think it's probably that cut and dry, until the SEC does something about it, they're going to continue to have that around them. Every team's going to think about it.
We know you're not a Tennessee apologist, Paul. You called for their firings earlier. So
all of them out of here.
I'll tell you who's not getting fired, and that's Paul Fortenberry over at White Insurance Services, where he does a great job. Paul, tell us what's going on as we hit the end of October. Halloween is coming up next week, and then the calendar turns to your favorite holiday, and that's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the part of this is just really helping business owners improve their insurance coverages and save money, which impacts lives. It impacts how what business owners can do for their employees, and maybe be able to help them pay them more, whatever that may be. And recently, we were just able to help cut someone's insurance costs by nearly 50% on a really big business account, which is huge for our clients because, like I said, what they get to do with the extra revenue that they get to keep in their pockets, whether that's they get to bless their families or they get to bless their employees or they get to invest more into their business. And we get to sleep, comfortable at night too, knowing we didn't skimp any coverages. We make sure that their business is safe and taken care of, and that we're getting the best value for their insurance. We think about it as a return on investment. So we're really proud of that at Wyatt, and that's what we strive to do. So if you're interested to see how we could help you, please visit WyattInsurance.com. Shoot me an email at paul@WyattInsurance.com or call us 865-862-3997.
Give Paul a call today, and he will set you up with unbelievable coverage, and he might even get you a pair of those specs that, of course, do have the camera.
Hey, LASIK surgery, boys. I got to wear these for a few weeks before LASIK surgery.
Let's take a look at the picks, and it's a down week in the conference, kind of a boring week. We're not going to have any kind of there's not going to be any separation this week. I know we're all taking the same. If we're not, I'll be stunned. Just like I thought. Everybody's taking Texas A&M. Everybody's taking Florida. Everybody's taking Auburn, and everybody's taking Ole Miss. So
I thought you were going with Florida after that buildup that you had earlier in the deal. I thought you had the Gators in a big win there.
I think I'd take Florida in the points if they're giving 14.5. If Georgia is, I think I'd take that. But straight up, no, not happening.
Here's the one thing. I mean, Kirby Smart knows this rivalry. I mean, he gets this rivalry as a player and a coach. Where does Florida in their understanding of just kind of the intensity? I mean, Kirby Smart will have Georgia, chewing the steel in the locker room coming out. Now, it may not be enough, to blow them out. But, I mean, the challenge Florida is going to have is going to be to match Georgia's early intensity in this game, because I promise you, I mean, Kirby Smart's got every quote he could find that says Georgia's supposed to lose this game, which nobody has said, but he'll find that quote somewhere and have this team ready to go.
He's the high school coach that would take an old bed sheet and, spray paint it and hang it from the stands at the stadium and go, the opposing team did that. You see what they did? The opposing team's not left their campus all week. I mean, he's 100% that way.
And Hubbard, I haven't thought, but you're right. Georgia, it feels like this is always a bigger game for Georgia than it is for Florida.
Since, what I mean? Since Spurrier was gone, Spurrier was always trying to hang a half 100 on him because he was still mad about something that happened during his playing days where he got beat and he was still trying to play catch up. It doesn't. I mean, it seems like it's got a little bit more juice. I mean, Georgia's mad. It's in Jacksonville. Georgia's always got a little angry edge about him in this game. So Florida has to match that early intensity, and that's not been Florida's strength when you look at where they're at. I mean, they've gotten jumped on by a good number of teams and have tried to play catch up, even in games that they've won. So can they be ready and match that intensity out of the gate? This Auburn game, I think it's the first one to 14 probably wins. If somebody can get to 14,
first one to 2.
My question with Auburn is defensively, can they continue at the level that they're going at when the offense is not producing as much as it can? I don't think Mississippi State can score, so I think Auburn wins this game. This is a big game for both these teams because winner here is probably a bowl team, loser is probably not a bowl team, right?
No, I thought about the same thing. That I wrestled with this pick. I mean, yeah, Mississippi State's win over Arkansas didn't look pretty, or I don't know, it didn't even look ugly. What's worse than ugly? But
gorgeous.
Yeah, but they won. They figured it out. I mean, you know, they aren't who they were under Leach anymore. That's for sure, and they can't score seemingly, you know, out of nowhere. But goodness, you know, I think this is a big game just for Auburn and Hugh Freeze in particular to kind of, hey, we're moving in the right direction. There's not leftovers from last year, losing games you shouldn't lose. So, yeah, I think at Mississippi State maybe it's a different conversation, but here at Auburn, and then, hey, Megan, I'm just real quick. I didn't hear AP talk about it. I saw you had the stats, the records up at the bottom. Where did those go? There we go. Okay. Just making sure everybody saw that. Still winning. Good to know.
It would be tied if Justin Wilcox had a kicker.
No, it wouldn't. You're down 2. I mean, you can't.
Yeah. Paul would have lost that one. I would have won that one.
Yeah.
We're right there, AP.
Listen, Paul pays for it. We'll let him win. All right. So let's get to Paul's pick here. I mean, this is a trash week in the conference. We've still almost done 30 minutes of yapping.
I had to talk about officiating for a while.
I have to get on one rant a week. That's kind of my –
Will Paul pick the Cats? The question is –
No, I'm not picking. Lexington, Kentucky, no offense to the fine people that live there. This is the worst place to go watch a football game. Tennessee is a business trip. Fly in.
Well, they don't fly.
Drive in, whatever. Drive to Lexington. Get out of there as quickly as possible. Is it calling for gray sky and rain like usual?
No, it's actually – I mean, it's a night game, so it'll be dark. But it's calling for 72 during the day and
clear skies.
60s.
No. Chance of rain.
Okay. Then it's going to rain. If you've ever been up there and there's a chance of rain, it's going to just settle right in on Lexington, a mist. It'll be a nasty mist. But no, man, I think Tennessee is the better team. I think Kentucky will struggle to slow down Tennessee's run game and should open up some opportunities in the pass game. Tennessee's going to have to execute. And I just don't think that for as maybe inconsistent as I've said Tennessee is in this podcast, I don't have any trust in Kentucky playing a really good opponent like they are this week. So, you know, I do consider it a pretty good game. Tennessee's, I think, 3.5, 4-point favorite. I think Tennessee wins by a touchdown. And Brent, you made a good point earlier. It makes me kind of a little sheepish, but the big plays Tennessee's hit over the last few years with Kentucky, and how that's somewhat been the separator, and that's kind of been Tennessee's Achilles heel, the lack of explosive plays. How will that play out in the game? So I'm interested to see that. But, yeah, I think Tennessee ends up getting the job done and driving that bus home late into the night, pulling into Knoxville with a dub.
Brent and myself will pick the game later in the week when the picks are in on Friday. They are Brent Hubbs.
Here's the last thing out the door. I know we got to go. I'm really surprised that Paul enjoyed going to Columbia, Missouri to watch football more than he enjoyed going to Lexington.
Yeah. No. I enjoyed neither of those places.
You just said it was – you pretty much said that's exactly what you said,
That's
Paul.
what you said. The worst place.
Yeah.
I can name 4 places in the conference.
Tied. Columbia, South Carolina, Columbia, Missouri, Lexington, Kentucky. All
Vanderbilt,
tied.
Mississippi State.
Oh, well, no. Okay, Starkville is there, but Nashville's great. It's just like you have to take a detour to Vanderbilt Stadium for 3 hours to watch a game. But you're in Nashville. It's great.
All right. They are Brent Hubbs and Paul Fortenberry. This has been the Ball with the Beast podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe this video. Get it out to more Vol fans or more SEC fans as we travel around the conference each week and talk SEC football presented by our good friends at Wyatt Insurance Services.